The grand examination chamber of the Galactic Survival Institute hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered around the central platform. Each delegation had sent their finest specimens, their strongest, smartest, most adaptable individuals, to undergo the ultimate test of biological resilience. Dr. Veltar, the Institute's chief examiner, stood before the assembled crowd, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's soft blue light into prismatic rainbows. Welcome, honored representatives, to the Centennial Extreme Environment Survival Assessment. As you know, this test determines which species may be granted access to the Outer Rim territories, those harsh, unforgiving worlds that hold unimaginable riches. The crowd murmured anxiously. The Zephyrians, with their gossamer wings and ethereal beauty, clustered together like nervous butterflies. The Gorniki delegation, massive and armored, stood confident but tense. The highly advanced Quillian technocrats checked and rechecked their bioenhancement implants. In the back corner, almost unnoticed, stood 3 humans. Captain Maria Santos adjusted her simple uniform and glanced at her companions Dr. James Wright, a xenobiologist, and Sergeant Mike O'Brien, a former Earth Special Forces operative. They looked remarkably unremarkable compared to the exotic assemblage around them. The test, Dr. Veltar continued, consists of 3 phases. Phase 1, temperature extremes. Phase 2, atmospheric tolerance. Phase 3, gravitational stress. Each phase will push your biological limits to their breaking point. Many of you will not survive. A collective shiver ran through the assembly. The crystalline hegemony representatives began harmonizing in their fear song, a haunting melody that spoke of impending doom. "We will begin with the Zephyrians," Veltar announced. The first representative, a graceful being that seemed to be made of living moonlight, stepped into the testing chamber. The temperature began to drop rapidly. At -10 degrees Celsius, the Zephyrian began to shiver violently. At -20, ice crystals formed on its delicate wings. At -30, it collapsed unconscious and had to be emergency extracted. Next phase, Veltar called grimly. Atmospheric composition. The chamber filled with an oxygen-poor atmosphere similar to high-altitude conditions on most death worlds. The Zephyrian lasted exactly 37 seconds before gasping for air and collapsing again. One by one, each species faced the trials. The massive Gorniki, despite their impressive bulk, couldn't handle the temperature swings that mimicked planetary seasonal changes. Their thick hides, evolved for temperate stability, cracked and bled when exposed to rapid heating and cooling cycles. The Quillians, confident in their technological augmentations, watched in horror as their bioimplants failed under gravitational stress that was only twice their homeworld's norm. Their enhanced bodies, optimized for their low-gravity paradise world, simply couldn't adapt. The Trilaxians, renowned for their mental fortitude, suffered complete psychological breakdown when exposed to atmospheric pressure changes that simulated weather systems. Their highly ordered minds couldn't process the chaos of dynamic environmental conditions. Species after species entered the chamber. Species after species failed. The ethereal collective, beings of pure energy housed in protective shells, found their containment units failing under basic temperature variants. The hive-minded Nexari lost cohesion when their queen link was disrupted by electromagnetic interference that mimicked common stellar phenomena. Dr. Veltar's earlier confidence was rapidly evaporating. In over 3 centuries of testing, no species had ever passed all 3 phases. The outer rim would remain empty, its resources untapped, because no biological entity could survive its harsh conditions. Perhaps, he announced with heavy resignation, we should consider that the outer rim territories are simply incompatible with sapient life. "Excuse me," a voice called from the back. Captain Santos stepped forward, raising her hand. "We haven't had our turn yet." The chamber fell silent. 46 species turned to stare at the small, unremarkable humans. Several delegates made sounds that translated roughly to polite skepticism. "Ah, yes," Dr. Veltar checked his notes. "The humans from Terra, was it? I'm afraid your homeworld classification doesn't inspire confidence. It's listed as a Class 12 death world." "That's right," Santos nodded cheerfully. "Shall we get started?" Dr. Wright stepped into the chamber first, whistling casually. The temperature dropped to -40°C. He zipped up his jacket and kept whistling. -60. He pulled on some gloves. -80. He did jumping jacks to stay warm, but showed no signs of distress. "Interesting," he called out to his companions. "Reminds me of that winter we spent in Antarctica." The temperature swung to +60°C. Wright stripped down to a t-shirt and kept moving. +80. He took a drink from his water bottle and grinned. Not as hot as Death Valley in August, but close. The Gornaki delegate's jaw dropped so low it audibly hit the floor. Phase 2 began. The atmospheric oxygen dropped to levels that had incapacitated every other species. Wright's breathing deepened slightly, but he continued his casual exercises. The atmospheric composition shifted to include trace toxins that should have been lethal. "Ah," Wright commented, sniffing the air. "Sulfur compounds. Reminds me of Yellowstone." "And is that methane?" "Nice touch." Dr. Veltar was frantically checking his instruments. "This is impossible. The atmospheric toxicity should have killed him 3 times over." "Doc," Sergeant O'Brien called from outside the chamber, "should we mention that Jimmy here grew up in New Jersey? He's used to toxic air." Phase 3 commenced. Gravitational stress began building. 2 times Terra normal. Wright adjusted his stance, but kept moving. 3 times normal. He switched to a military crawl, but maintained his cheerful demeanor. 4 times normal, a level that had crushed the strongest Gornaki warrior like a tin can. "Hey Maria," Wright grunted, still mobile despite the crushing gravity. "Remember basic training at high altitude. This is like that, but with better climate control." When Wright finally emerged from the chamber, completely unharmed, and asking if they had any snacks, the assembled delegates sat in stunned silence. Sergeant O'Brien went next, treating the entire ordeal like a particularly enjoyable workout routine. He actually started doing push-ups during the gravitational stress phase, claiming it added a nice challenge to the exercise. Captain Santos completed the trial while giving a running commentary on similar conditions she'd experienced during various Earth military deployments. "The heat's not bad, reminds me of Afghanistan in summer. The cold's actually pleasant compared to survival training in Alaska. And the gravity? Well, I've been through fighter pilot G-force training." When all 3 humans had completed the trials without breaking a sweat, Dr. Veltar approached them with something approaching awe. "How?" he whispered. "How did you survive conditions that killed or incapacitated every other species?" Captain Santos exchanged glances with her teammates, then shrugged. "Doc, I think you need to understand something about Earth. What you call extreme conditions that make worlds uninhabitable. That's just Tuesday for us." Dr. Wright nodded enthusiastically. "See, our planet has ice ages, heat waves, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, toxic gas emissions, radiation, atmospheric pressure changes, massive gravitational variations due to altitude, poisonous creatures, deadly plants, and about 1,000 other things trying to kill us every day. We call it home," O'Brien added with a grin. Dr. Veltar processed this information slowly. "So you're saying that your entire species has been preparing for this test for millions of years?" "Preparing?" Santos laughed. "Doc, this isn't preparation. This is vacation compared to home." As the 3 humans prepared to leave, Having become the first species ever to pass all phases of the test, Captain Santos turned back to the stunned assembly. "Oh, and Dr. Velter, you might want to update your classification system. What you call Deathworlds that are too dangerous for sapient life. We call those real estate opportunities." The chamber erupted in chaos as 46 species tried to process the fact that somewhere in the galaxy, an entire civilization had evolved on a world so hostile that it had accidentally created the most resilient species in known space. And the humans? They were already planning their first colony ships to the Outer Rim, discussing the upcoming challenges with the enthusiasm of tourists planning a camping trip.